Fire. Humans take it for granted now. A flick of a switch, a turn of a dial, light and heat on demand. But once, fire was divine, sacred, the exclusive property of the gods. And there was a time, not so long ago in the measure of cosmic ages, when humans huddled in darkness, when they ate raw meat and shivered through winters. When night meant terror and cold meant death, the gods had fire, light without limit, warmth eternal, the ability to transform raw into cooked, darkness into day, coal into comfort. And humans had none of it. This inequality bothered someone, one of the titans who sided with Zeus during the war, one who had forethought, foresight, one whose name meant he who thinks ahead. Prometheus, the firebringer, the friend of mortals, the one who would defy Zeus himself, not for personal gain, but for love of a species the gods had created and abandoned. Let me tell you about rebellion that stems from compassion, about theft in service of justice, about the price one being paid so that millions could see in the dark. This is one of my favourite myths. Perhaps because I understand what it means to transgress, to take what you are not supposed to have, to give gifts the powerful would rather withhold. And perhaps because Prometheus reminds me that sometimes the highest morality is defiance of immoral authority. Let me show you how one titan's crime became humanity's salvation. Prometheus was a titan, son of Pythagorean, brother to Atlas, who now holds the sky, and Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, and who would later accept Pandora as a gift. But unlike myth titans, Prometheus sided with Zeus during the war. Why? Because Prometheus had a gift the other titans lacked: foresight. Promethea, the ability to see ahead, to calculate trajectories, to know what comes next. He saw that Zeus would win, not through strength alone, but through strategy, through freeing the right allies, through innovation over tradition. So Prometheus joined the winning side, pragmatic, intelligent, forward-thinking. He became Zeus's advisor. His intelligence was valued, his foresight useful. He was rewarded, honoured, given status in the new order. By all accounts, Prometheus had won, sided with the victors, secured his place in the Olympian age. But then, Prometheus looked at humanity, and something shifted in him. The gods had created humans, though the myths disagree on how. Some say Prometheus himself shaped them from clay. Others say they emerged from Gaia. Still others claim they were born from the blood of slain titans. However they came to be, humans existed. And they suffered. They had no fire, no technology, no protection from cold or dark or predators. They lived brief, brutal lives in constant fear. The gods noticed this and did nothing. Or worse, they noticed and enjoyed it. The hierarchy maintained, the divine separate from the mortal, the powerful keeping their advantages. Prometheus, who had sided with power, now sided with the powerless. He had foresight. He could see what would happen if he acted. He knew the price he would pay, and he chose to pay it anyway. This is the moment that defines him, not intelligence, not foresight, but compassion strong enough to override self-preservation. Let me paint the picture clearly, so you understand what Prometheus saw. Humans were created, or emerged or formed, but they were given almost nothing. No claws, no fangs, no thick fur, no natural weapons or armor. Physically, they were weak, vulnerable, prey animals with delusions of significance. They ate their meat raw, if they could catch anything. It made them sick, more often than nourished them. They huddled together for warmth in winter, and still many froze. They feared the night absolutely, because darkness meant danger. They could not see coming. They lived perhaps 30 years if they were fortunate. Most have died younger. And above them, the gods feasted by firelight, cooked their food to perfection, enjoyed warmth without cold, light without darkness. Fire was theirs, their property, their privilege. Some gods argued humans did not deserve fire, that the separation between divine and mortal must be maintained. At giving mortals too much power would make them dangerous, ambitious, threatening to the natural order, Zeus's position is debated. Some myths say he explicitly forbade fire for mortals, that it was conscious cruelty, or at least calculated control. Others suggest he simply did not care, that human suffering did not register as important enough to address, benign neglect rather than malicious oppression. Perhaps the latter is worse. Cruelty at least acknowledges existence. Indifference does not even grant that dignity. Prometheus saw human suffering, and he saw gods who could end that suffering with a single gift, but would not. So he made a choice. A choice he knew would cost him everything. He would steal fire from the gods and give it mortals. Not for glory, not for gratitude, not even with certainty that humans would use it wisely. Simply because it was right. The theft itself is told various ways. All agree on the essential act. Prometheus stole fire, but the details shift depending on who is telling. Some say he took fire from the forge of Hephaestus, god of craftsmen. Others say he stole it from the chariot of Helios, the sun god, as it descended for night. Most traditions say he took it from the sacred hearth of Olympus itself, from Hestia's eternal flame, the fire that symbolized divine authority and cosmic order. He concealed the fire in a hollow fennel stalk, a simple plant, common, unremarkable. The gods would not notice one stalk carried from Olympus, but inside, the coal burned. Divine fire, stolen, hidden, transported. I find it poetic, the most transformative gift in human history, carried in a piece of vegetation. The cosmic, concealed in the common. The sacred transported in the mundane. Much like the Samhain practice of taking a burning coal from the sacred bonfire and placing it in a carved turnip to reignite the hearth fires at home. He descended from Olympus, crossed the boundary between divine and mortal, and there, in a cave where humans huddled in cold darkness, Prometheus opened the fennel stalk and shared the fire. Watch this moment carefully. This is one of the most important instances in mythology. In human imagination, fire catches, spreads. Humans see light they control for the first time. Feel warmth they command. Taste cooked food. See in the dark. The transformation is instant and eternal. With fire came everything. Cooked food, safer, more nutritious, easier to digest. Humans could eat a wider variety of foods. They grew stronger. Warmth, survival through winter, expansion into colder climates, protection and comfort, light, extending the day. The ability to work, create, live beyond sunset, safety from night predators, and later, fire that brought metallurgy, pottery. All technology stems from the controlled flame. Prometheus watched humans discover what fire could do, watched them transform from cowering creatures to makers, builders, dreamers, and he knew Zeus would discover the theft. He had foresight. He could see his punishment before it arrived, and he deemed it worth the price. Zeus saw fire burning on earth. At first, perhaps he did not understand. Then recognition came, then fury. The king of gods had been stolen from, his authority transgressed, his exclusive property shared with mortals without his permission. But more than that, the hierarchy had been disrupted. The separation between divine and mortal blurred. Power had been redistributed. He summoned Prometheus, demanded explanation. The myths do not record the exact words. But we know Prometheus did not apologize, did not beg for mercy, did not claim accident or temporary madness. He had stolen fire deliberately, for humanity's benefit, and he would do it again. Zeus's rage was partly wounded pride, partly violated authority, but also, and the myths rarely acknowledge this, partly fear. If a titan who served him could defy him for mortals, what came next? Would other gods follow Prometheus's example? Would mortals, empowered by fire, eventually challenge the gods themselves? Zeus feared what Uranus and Cronus had feared, that the next generation would rise, that power was never permanent, that holding tightly guaranteed losing eventually. So Zeus's punishment was not just punitive, it was demonstrative, a message to any other god who might side with mortals over divine authority. Prometheus would be bound. chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains, the edge of the known world, isolated, exposed. Every day, an eagle, some say the eagle was Zeus himself transformed, would come and tear open his side, devouring his liver. Every night, being immortal, Prometheus would heal the liver, regenerating, and the next day it would happen again, forever, eternal torture, unending agony, the price of compassion, the cost of defiance. They bound him with adamant, the same indestructible material from which Cronus' sickle was forged. The chains that could restrain Titan, the location was deliberate. The Caucasus, far from Olympus, far from humanity, on the edge of everything, where few would witness his suffering, where his cries could not reach anyone who might feel compassion, exposed to all elements, burning sun, freezing rain, howling winds, alone, and every day the eagle came. I will not describe the details of his torment. You can imagine, or perhaps you prefer not to. What matters is this: the pain was designed to be maximal, the healing designed to be complete. So if the next day's torture will be as fresh and terrible as the first, no diminishment, no adaptation, no mercy of numbness, eternally suffering, renewed eternally. Days became weeks, weeks became years, years became centuries. Some myths say he was bound for 30,000 years. Others just say forever. When you are immortal, perhaps the distinction does not matter. I have visited him. Cats can go anywhere. We move between realms freely. And I wanted to see if this Titan, alone with his agony, regretted his choice. So I sat on his rock during a night when the eagle had gone, and his flesh was slowly knitting itself back together. And I asked him, was it worth it? He looked down at the earth, at the fires burning across it, the cities humans were building, the civilizations rising, the art, the technology, the slow flowering of potential fire had unlocked, and he said, well, different traditions record different words, but the meaning was clear, yes. After centuries of torture, knowing he faced eternity more, still, yes, because the math of sacrifice is not about equal exchange. It is not my suffering versus humanity's benefit, weighed on scales. It is about meaning, about purpose, about whether your existence served something beyond yourself. Prometheus's suffering was real, terrible, unjust. And his gift was real, transformative, civilization creating. Both truths existed. The Pythagoreans understood. Reality contains contradictions. The same act can be crime and heroism. Punishment and meaning can coexist. And sometimes suffering without purpose is unbearable. But suffering with purpose becomes something else, not good, not desired, but meaningful. Prometheus found meaning in his chains. The story has another chapter, though whether it brings comfort or not depends on how you tell it. Eventually, after a vast span of time, Heracles came. The greatest Greek hero, performing his 12 labors, he saw Prometheus bound, heard the story, and with Zeus's grudging permission, Heracles shot the eagle and freed Titan from his chains. Prometheus was freed, after enduring, after surviving, after proving that his spirit could not be broken, even if his flesh was torn daily. Some versions end here, triumphant, the suffering over, justice eventually prevailing, but other versions add a detail that changes everything. Zeus demanded Prometheus bear a ring forever after, a ring made from the chains that bound him, set with a piece of the rock where he suffered, a reminder, a mark, a symbol that even in freedom, the punishment remains part of him. So was he truly freed. Or did a punishment simply transform from external chains to internal memory, from literal binding to symbolic burden? The Greeks debated this. Some saw the ending as happy, the hero freed, the tyrant forced to relent, justice restored. Others saw it as bittersweet. Freedom granted, but scars remaining. The suffering ended, but not erased. Prometheus alive, but forever marked by his choice. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps suffering that deep never truly ends. It just becomes part of who you are, part of your story, part of the price you paid for meaning and humanity. Never knew Prometheus's name, never understood what he sacrificed, so they could have light. They used fire, they benefited from it, they built civilizations on its foundation. But the Titan who suffered for them remained forgotten by most, known to a few, understood by fewer still. This too is part of the story. The one who sacrifices is rarely remembered by those who benefit. The gift outlives the giver's name, not always, but often enough to hurt. So what is this myth really about? Theft, punishment, the price of compassion. The Pythagorean would see multiple patterns here. First, the spiral of authority and rebellion. Zeus overthrew his father for tyranny, then became tyrannical himself, punishing compassion as if it were crime, the pattern continuing. The liberator becoming an oppressor again. Second, the archetype of the sacred rebel, the one who defies authority not for personal gain, but for collective good. Every culture has these figures. Every age needs them. Prometheus is the template, the one who sees suffering and acts, knowing the personal cost, deeming the cost worthwhile if it serves something larger. Third, the unstoppable nature of certain gifts. Once given, fire cannot be taken back. Once humans had it, Zeus could not reclaim it without destroying humanity entirely. Some gifts, once shared, transform reality permanently. Knowledge is like this: consciousness, enlightenment. It cannot be unlearned. This terrifies those in power, because us depends on scarcity, on monopoly, on keeping certain things exclusive. Prometheus did not just give fire, he gave the knowledge that monopoly could be broken, that authority could be defied, that gifts did not have to flow only downward from the powerful. That was his real crime, not theft, inspiration. So I ask you, what fire are you withholding that others need? What gift could you share that would transform others' lives, even if sharing it costs you? When have you witnessed suffering and looked away because intervention would be inconvenient, dangerous, costly? And the harder questions: when authority demands you hoard what should be shared, do you comply? When power punishes compassion, do you stay silent? When you see someone bound and suffering, do you visit them in their isolation or pretend not to notice? Prometheus' fire was literal and metaphorical. It was flame and enlightenment, technology and consciousness, the practical and the symbolic. What fire do you carry, and who sits in darkness because you have not shared it? Perhaps you are afraid of the cost. That is reasonable. Prometheus paid terribly, but consider, he suffered with meaning, with purpose, knowing his pain served something beyond himself. While those who hoard their fire, who keep their gifts to themselves, who comply with unjust authority to avoid discomfort, they suffer too, differently, the suffering of emptiness, of complicity, of never knowing if they could have been brave. Prometheus was eventually freed, but even if he had not been, even if the torture continued forever, I suspect he would make the same choice. Because some beings are built for sacrifice, not because they love suffering, but because they cannot bear complicity with suffering. Are you one of them? The Greeks gave us Prometheus as a reminder. Sometimes the highest morality is defiance of immoral authority. Sometimes compassion requires crime. Sometimes love demands sacrifice. They also showed us the cost, clearly, unflinchingly. They did not promise that doing right would be rewarded. They promised it would be hard, painful, possibly eternal. And they suggested, do it anyway, because fire, once given, cannot be taken back, and light, once shared, spreads beyond any power's ability to contain. Zeus punished Prometheus. He could not undo the gift, could not reclaim the fire, could not make humanity forget what they would learned. The tyrant won the battle, the rebel won the war. Though I suspect Prometheus would say, there are no winners, only those who carry meaning, and those who do not. The fire still burns, in your homes, in your technology, in your ability to see in darkness and stay warm in cold, but also in your consciousness, your capacities to defy unjust authority, your ability to choose compassion over compliance. Prometheus gave you more than fire. He gave you permission to rebel. When rebellion serves love, use it wisely, share it freely, and remember the Titan who suffered so you could see.